I have always been drawn to old houses. There is something in them that newer buildings do not have, a density, a weight, the particular quality of walls that have held decades of living inside them. My husband never understood this. Marcus preferred clean lines, open plans, the kind of space that tells you exactly what it is and keeps no surprises. He married me anyway, which I had always taken as evidence of his love. It was also, I would come to understand, evidence of his confidence. The house on Alderton Road was my choice entirely. 3 stories, red brick, built in 1908, with original fireplaces in 4 rooms and a garden that had gone beautifully wild in the way of gardens that have been left to their own instincts for too long. Marcus walked through it with his hands in his pockets and said, "It needs a lot of work," in the tone of a man who had already decided. I said, "I know, I'll work." That's what I love about it. We moved in on a Friday in September. The room was on the 2nd floor, at the end of the hallway. I did not find it immediately. For the first 3 weeks, I was absorbed in the ordinary chaos of moving, unpacking, arranging, learning the particular personality of old plumbing, discovering which windows swelled in the rain and which floorboards had opinions about being walked on after midnight. Marcus traveled for work. 4 days a week, sometimes 5. This had always been the shape of our marriage, his absences, my adjustments to them, the particular self-sufficiency I had built over 8 years of being. Functionally, a woman who lived alone in a shared life. I did not mind the solitude. I had learned not to mind it. It was on a Tuesday morning, 3 weeks after we moved in, that I noticed the wall. I was in the 2nd floor study, a room I had claimed for myself, lined with built-in bookshelves that ran floor to ceiling along the north wall. I was measuring for new shelving brackets when I noticed something I'd seen before, but not registered. The bookshelf on the far left did not sit flush against the wall. The gap was perhaps an inch, no more, the kind of thing you would dismiss as an old house settling, as the natural imprecision of Victorian-era construction. But when I ran my hand along the edge of the shelf, I felt a draft, cold, faint, coming from behind. I pushed the shelf. It moved. The room behind it was small, perhaps 8 feet by 10, with no window, no natural light. The air inside was stale, not the stale of a room unused for a season, but the stale of a room sealed for years, decades. The air inside it having given up any relationship with the outside world and settled into its own gray stillness. I stood in the doorway for a moment, my hands still on the shelf, and let my eyes adjust. Then I found the light switch, an old toggle bakelite, the kind that clicks rather than snaps. The bulb that came on was bare and low wattage, casting a thin yellow light over what the room contained. And what it contained stopped me completely. The walls were covered, not with wallpaper, with paper sheets and sheets of it. Some pinned directly to the plaster, some overlapping, some yellowed with age, and some less so. A layered archive of I stepped closer, writing, handwriting in several colors of ink, covering every surface from shoulder height down to the floor in places. Running in, rows and columns, and sometimes in spiraling patterns that suggested the writer had simply continued when they reached the end of a line and found themselves without direction. In the center of the room was a small wooden chair, the kind with a ladder back, simple and functional. It faced the wall. On the floor beside the chair was a tin box, the kind used for tea or biscuits, with a small padlock through the hasp that had rusted but held. And on the wall directly in front of the chair, at eye level for someone sitting, was a single photograph pinned with a brass tack of a woman I did not recognize. She was perhaps 40. Dark-haired, she was not looking at the camera. She was looking somewhere to the right with an expression that was very specific and very difficult to name. The expression of someone who is present in a room and simultaneously somewhere else entirely. Somewhere safer. I knew that expression. I had worn it myself. I took a step into the room. The writing on the walls, I understood as I began to read it, was a record. Dates and times. Tuesday 14th, 11 p.m., return home. Smell of perfume on jacket, not mine. And below it, Wednesday 5th, 10th. checked phone while sleeping, deleted messages, names I don't recognize. And further along, he told me I imagined it. He said this quietly. The way he says things, he wants me to believe completely. I am beginning to understand that quiet is not the same as gentle. I read for a long time, moving slowly along the wall, following the chronology as best I could. Her name, I gathered from several entries, was Diane. Diane had lived in this house. Diane had found this room, or perhaps had made it, and had used it as the one place in the house that belonged entirely to her. A place to put things she could not say aloud. A place to keep in the permanence of ink on plaster. A record of things she was being told had not happened. He moved my keys again. The third time this month. When I ask where they are, he hands them to me from a place I have already checked. As if I simply missed them, as if I am careless, as if I cannot trust my own memory. I know where I put my keys. I have always known where I put my keys. He told his sister I have been fragile lately. He said this within my hearing, which I do not think was an accident. I have started writing everything down. Date, time, exactly what happened, exactly what was said. This is the only thing I know how to do. If I cannot trust my memory, I will create one that cannot be altered. I stood in the center of that small room with the bare bulb above me, and I read a woman's accounting of her own life, careful, precise, the record of someone who had understood that the ground beneath her was not reliable and had decided to build something solid out of words. I felt cold in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature. I took the tin box downstairs. The padlock gave way with a flat head. Screwdriver and minimal effort, it had rusted through. More simple than security by now. Inside, a folded letter, a second photograph, and a small key on a plain ring. The letter was addressed to no one. It began without preamble. If someone finds this, I need you to know that I am not confused. I am not fragile. I am not the woman he has described to the people around us. I know exactly who I am, and I know exactly what has been happening in this house for the past 4 years, and I'm writing it down because the alternative is letting it disappear, letting it be revised, letting his version become the only version. His name is Richard Calloway. We have lived at this address since 2009. I have been trying to leave for 2 years. Every time I have tried, something has happened. My car has broken down in ways that could not be coincidence. My friendships have quietly collapsed. My family has been given a version of me that I do not recognize. I have been made very gradually and very deliberately into someone who cannot leave. Someone who has nowhere to go. If you're reading this, it means I either escaped or I did not. I hope I escaped. But just in case, please know that I was here. Please know that I was real. Please know that whatever story you have been told about me, there is another one, and it is written on the walls upstairs, and it is true. I set the letter down on the kitchen table. I sat very still, and then, very slowly, the way understanding arrives when it has been waiting just outside, and you have finally opened the door, I began to think about certain things. I thought about my keys, which had been in the wrong place 3 times this month. I thought about the conversation Marcus had with his brother last weekend, the conversation I had walked in on, the one that stopped when I entered the room, the one where Marcus had said something I caught only the end of. She's been a little off lately. I think the new house is stressing her out. I thought about my best friend Jenna, who had been quietly less available over the past year, who had said, the last time we spoke, that Marcus had mentioned I seemed withdrawn. I thought about the job I had left 2 years ago. The one, Marcus had said, was making me anxious. The one he had suggested, gently, that I might be happier without. I thought about the way he said things quietly. The particular quality of his quiet. I sat at the kitchen table for a long time. Then I went back upstairs. I stood in the doorway of the hidden room, and I looked at the walls, at Diane's walls, Diane's words, Diane's careful, devastating record, and I understood something that settled in my chest with the specific weight of truth that has been present for a long time before you are ready to see it. Diane and I had lived in the same house. with different men, in different years, but I recognized the room she had built, because I had been building one inside myself for a very long time. I did not confront Marcus that night. He came home on Thursday as scheduled, and I made dinner and we sat at the table and talked about the house and his work trip and the garden, and I watched him with new eyes, careful, quiet eyes, and I let the ordinary surface of things remain undisturbed. But I had already done several things by then. I had photographed every wall of the hidden room. I had called Jenna the real Jenna, not the version of Jenna that had been handed a version of me. And I had talked for 2 hours, and something between us had reopened. And at the end of the call she had said, "I've been worried about you." I didn't know how to say it, and I had said, "I know, I'm figuring it out." I had also found, in the records at the county office, the name of the previous owner, Diane Callowan, listed as having sold the property in 2017. She had sold it. She had gotten out. I held this information in both hands carefully, the way you hold something fragile and precious. She had gotten out. I went back to the hidden room one last time the night before I made my decision. I sat in the small wooden chair and I looked at the walls, at the years of Diane's careful testimony, and I thought about what it means to leave proof of yourself in a place where it might be found. The particular act of faith that requires the belief held against all evidence to the contrary that the truth matters, that someone someday will read it and understand. I took a pen from my pocket. In the small space below Diane's last entry, below the date she had written and the words she had left, I wrote my own. "My name is Sarah. I found this room on a Tuesday in October. I read everything you wrote. I believe you, every word. You gave me something I did not know I needed. You gave me a record. You gave me the courage to start keeping one of my own. I hope you are somewhere safe. I hope you have a room of your own that no one can enter without your permission. I hope the ground beneath you is solid. Thank you for writing it down." I left the house on a Saturday morning. I took what was mine, which was less than I had arrived with, but more than I had realized. My books, my documents, the things that could not be replaced, the tin box and its contents, which I had decided did not belong to the house but to the truth. I did not leave a note. Some things do not require explanation to the person who already knows. I live differently now, in a smaller space with better light, with a lock on the door that only I have the key to. I have rebuilt slowly the friendships that had been quietly dismantled. I have found work again. I have found, by increments, the version of myself that existed before 8 years of slow erosion. It is not dramatic, this rebuilding. It does not look like anything from the outside. It looks like a woman making coffee in her own kitchen on a Tuesday morning, unlocking her own door, answering her own phone. It looks like ordinary life. It is the most extraordinary thing I have ever done. I think about Diane often, about the room she built and the walls she filled and the letter she left for whoever came after. I think about the specific, quiet bravery of a woman who, when she could not speak aloud, wrote everything down, who trusted that the truth, placed carefully enough in the right hands, would eventually find its way to light. She was right. I found it, and it saved me.